that made a difference was when I slowed down to be like, oh, what wants to be revealed? What's like the juiciest part of me that I could share with the world, and what like lights me up?
I know a lot of people who are doing business coaching or entrepreneurs, they say, okay, you must always have this kind of schedule. And what you're talking about is so much more this sense of inspiration and like it wants to come through, it wants to come out, and that's when you create.
Yeah, totally. And I just have learned, I'm like, it is so energetically expensive for me to write something because I think that I should,
Yeah.
and that's actually why I didn't do an email list for the longest time. Like I had emails and I just didn't nurture them. Um, because I like was like, I don't know what to say, and because it was coming from a place of like I should say something. But
Mm.
the thing that made a difference was when I slowed down to be like, oh, what wants to be revealed? What's like the juiciest part of me that I could share with the world, and what like lights me up, and then that's the new place from which I've actually started like emailing my list, for the first time ever. I've been a coach for 5 years. This is the first time I have a list.
Wow. Well, it totally comes through. And for those of you watching this, if you're not on Kaylin's email list, get on her list. It's going to be the highlight of your week or month or day or whenever, however often she sends them, because it just feels so alive and so rich. And I can just feel that you are really feeling what it is that you're saying. It doesn't feel like just like, da, 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 da. Like it's very alive. It's inspiring.
Oh, well, I it is so fulfilling to hear that, because sometimes I still question myself. I'm like, I don't know, this feels my neighbor's waving at me. This feels like real to me, and that's my like bar, and then I'm like, oh, if it resonates with people, like amazing.
Yeah. Absolutely. But that's you creating from a place of really deeply connecting to yourself and connecting to what turns you on. And even as you're speaking, and maybe we can talk about this next or as things come up, like I really feel like sex and sexual energy and sexual interaction is such an incredible teacher of everything. And I once had a Tantra teacher who said, someone was asking her about when she gives a tantric massage to someone, what she does. And does she get pleasure in that experience? And she said, I don't do anything that doesn't turn me on. And I
Yeah,
was like, brilliant. That's fucking brilliant. If it doesn't turn me on, I don't want to do it.
totally. It's like, this is such a game changer for your life. If you can like look at all the nooks and crannies of like, how could this be pleasurable? You know? And yeah, it's like I'm just a no. If it's not like, if there's not a way for me to like sort of bring my own flavor of turn on to it, then I'm just like, yeah, I'm not interested. I got an MRI on Wednesday, which is a routine thing for me because I have a health diagnosis. So normal thing that happens every 6 months, and like, that's not that fun to go sit in a machine that's making loud noises for 2 hours and feel really constrained. But I really was like, oh, what does my heart really want here? Like what would actually have this be nourishing? And so I created this whole night with my girlfriends, like an MRI night where we went out to dinner, we had like an MRI pregame dinner, and then they walked me to the appointment, they dropped me off. They had a great time catching up while I was in the MRI. I came out, they presented me with a gift, like these silky pajamas, and we just like laughed in the parking lot for an hour after the appointment. And I just had this moment of like really seeing how you can bring this to every area of your life. And you know, to your point of like your sexuality can be a teacher. I mean, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious, Cailin, as you're speaking about this, I know from your emails and from talking to you a little bit about your story and how you came about to doing the work that you do, but I'm curious about that transition into living a life based more on pleasure and desire and connecting to yourself, and how that shift happened for you.
Yeah. Well, it really required me to slow down, like exponentially. And which is the thing that honestly I was most uncomfortable with. Um, but you know, at the time when I started this work, I was, you know, 32-year-old woman who had never had an orgasm. And you know, and I had just been gotten this health diagnosis. And so I'm looking around at my life, you know, going sort of like, what the fuck? Like, how is this happening? And so I started receiving touch on my body, all over my body, and on my clitoris in a way that felt really safe, like in a way that I could actually say yes to it. You know, I started my own self pleasure practice so that I could get in touch with my body. And I just started creating these like bite-sized experiences for myself, like realizing all the times that I had, you know, maybe had sex when I wasn't a full yes to it, you know, or did something, you know, inside of you know a sexual experience that like I was sort of like 75% into. And so in sort of taking a giant step back, slowing down, focusing on like bite-sized like ways to receive intimacy, you know, like, oh, I'd like to make out for 5 minutes and then have a conversation. I'd
Yeah.
like you to just stroke my arms really delicately, and then I'm just going to tell you if I want more or less of something.
Mm.
And that, like, people think, you know, oh my gosh, Cailin, she has this like wild sex life. And that can be true sometimes, you know, but it's actually like my whole journey has been about slowing down, meeting, you know, my pussy right where she is, honoring my body, and then allowing the expansion from there, right? Allowing like the unfolding of what wants to come through my body, you know? And so that's like where my first orgasm came from, right? It's not from up here. It's like, oh, like from down here.
Yeah.
So, and then that just started flooding into every area of my life. You know, it's like all of a sudden, it's like, wait, I got this wedding invitation. Do I actually have a desire to go to this wedding? You know, do I actually have a desire to be friends with this person? Do I have a desire to take this client on?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that will change your life.
Wow. So interesting, Cailin, what you're saying. I love it. And it really resonates. And I'm curious about the distinction between loving where you're at and deciding moment to moment, here I am, I'm going to love this. Like, how can I find pleasure in this moment, which you talked about earlier with the idea of the MRI, or even just in a moment finding pleasure, and the difference between that versus like moving actively towards what you want. Does
Mm,
that make sense? Like being like, okay, here I am, how can I enjoy this? Versus, ooh, I feel myself pulled towards that.
yeah, well, I think that it's important to distinguish like the difference between complacency and like genuine presence and gratitude for where you are, right? It's like you can have whatever relationship you want to where you are. And so if you're complacent, then it's just like, okay, well, you're totally resigned and like this is how life has to be. But but like you said, if you're actually like really appreciating the moment that you're in, you can appreciate that and acknowledge that and love that, and you get to hold your bigger desire. You know, oftentimes when women come to work with me, they're so scared to say what they actually want. You know, like I just talked to a woman a couple hours ago, and you know, she was saying like, I don't really want to say that I'm going after a partner because what if I don't get a partner? Then I look a certain way, you know. And so there's this thing we have around like it's not okay to want what you want.
Mm.
And so my work is about saying, okay, wow, you know what? I am here in this moment and I'm cleaning my house. I can't afford to hire a house cleaner right now, but I'm just dreaming of
Mm.
the day and desiring the day when I can create.
Mm.
I'm allowed to want that level
Mm.
of care.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And so it's like the permission for wanting it and then the permission to be where you are.
Mm.
And then there's also so much juice in the wanting. Like this is the thing that people miss out on is that yearning is so fucking hot. You know? Like this is why women want the guy that doesn't give them attention. Because we love to yearn. And so I say you can play with this, you know, and really let your whole body feel how much desire you have for that thing.
Mm.
Enjoy the process of yearning for it.
Mm. Yeah. And even as you're so expressive with your body and your words, like I can feel what you're saying, and that the feeling of yearning as you're describing it, like it feels like a fully embodied experience, an imaginative experience of like, oh, that would be so good. Like, oh my God, that's gonna feel fucking amazing. And you feel it in that moment.
Yeah, and you can get like so much juice out of that, you know? Like I love talking about like being a slut. You know, like I love to like yearn for that kind of experience. And I'm just like, there's so much juice in that for me. And honestly, I probably get even more juice talking about it. Like it's also hot, right? When I like play this out with a partner. But but honestly, the conversation about it just turns me on so much.
Yeah.
And then if I get it, it's like, oh my gosh, I got it. But it was like I was so fun imagining and really like opening my body to receive it, you know, that then when it gets here, it's like, oh my gosh, it's here. Okay.
Oh, here it is.
Okay, great.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a
Yeah.
distinction that a teacher of mine made between fantasy and imagination, which I found really helpful. And I'm curious if it resonates with you. This idea that fantasy can be a more disembodied state, almost like disconnected, where it's like, oh, here's this idea of something, but I'm not really feeling it and living it and experiencing it through my whole body. Whereas imagination, which taps more into this feeling of yearning that you were describing, is more,
Yeah.
how can I feel that experience? Like almost as though I'm already in it. And to me, that's when the magic of manifestation or whatever it is that you're trying to experience in your life, that's where the magic is in that more imaginative space where you're actually experiencing it as so real and so vivid that, like you said, when it comes, it's like, oh, of course it's coming because I was already living that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. You know, until recently, the last couple of years, I never understood why I didn't like the question, like, what's your fantasy? What are your sexual fantasies? That question never has resonated for me. When people ask me that, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I literally just like could never come up with an answer, And I sort of felt like, oh, is there something wrong with me? But now what I know is I'm like, yes, I totally agree with that, that like a fantasy is something that's out there. You're not connected to it. It exists in some other universe and some other planet, and it's not a part of who you are. And so it's just sort of like, okay, I don't know. Like it feels random to me, honestly. Fantasy feels so random. Versus, and it's like you're tricking your mind, it feels grimy to me. Yeah. But so you use the word imagination and I use the word desired, I think, for in a similar way. And so yeah, desire lives in your body. It's actually connected to who you are and to your essence. And desire, I believe, actually desire comes from like the root word, the root Latin word is like of the Father, meaning like it comes from the divine, regardless however you want to relate to that word of the Father. The intention of it is that like it's from spirit. And so fantasy is just this thing over here that's disconnected, but desire is just like direct channeling from God or whoever your source is, And so that to me, like, is that's all I care about. Like that's what I serve.
Wow. Cailin, why weren't you the minister at my church? Oh my God. Life would be so great growing up.
Honestly, I spoke to a woman recently on my podcast, a woman that I went to college with, and she is a minister, or yeah, she's a minister. And oh my gosh, just we were having a similar kind of conversation, and I was like, you know what? Wow, like if you were leading a church, I think I could go to church.
You're like, where's your church? I'll come.
Like it's across the country, but if I lived where you live, I would come to your church.
Amazing. I mean, that is such an incredible reversal of certainly the way that I was raised and the way I think a lot of people are raised, with this idea that desire is sinful, that wanting things in the flesh is somehow dirty. And even the root of that word, it's so totally the opposite.
Yeah, it's literally of the Father. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So, if you can just get in sync with that, then at least for me, the only person I have to answer to is spirit. That's it. It's that simple. And if it's not simple, it's not spirit.
Huh. Wow. And what do you find are the main ways that people get in their own way? Because I know for me, when I'm hearing you, I'm like, yes. And I find myself in that flow where I'm feeling that desire, feeling that pull, and I'm going for it, and it feels amazing. But there's a lot of times when I feel there's like some resistance between me and really tapping into that. So I'm curious, from your experience of working with people, especially women, what you have noticed and how you help people to move beyond what may be getting in the way of them channeling that desire into their lives.
Mm-hmm. This came up earlier in a conversation, and I hadn't thought of it in this way, but this is just a new thing I'm getting literally today, which is this idea, especially for women, that we are supposed to be independent. I'm an independent woman. And I say, fuck that. I'm not an independent woman. I am a receptive woman. Like, I have a whole team of people that are managing things for me. And, there's no way. I'm not trying to be independent. But, and I think, I don't actually think that when people say that, I don't think that was the intention, right? It's meant to be this thing of like, oh, we're strong as women, So let's be clear. I'm all about like women are strong, women are powerful, right? But this like I'm an independent woman thing has had women say to themselves like, oh, I'm supposed to figure this out on my own. I shouldn't have to ask for help, or if I feel this way, I shouldn't share that. That's weird. So we have this whole culture that's been built around independence. And I just don't think it's done much for women to really step into their feminine and receive. That's the biggest thing I see getting in the way of for women is opening to receive. It's like the woman that doesn't want somebody to open the door for her. It's like you're literally blocking everything that you desire coming into you.
Fascinating. And the word that's coming to mind as you're speaking is fear.
Yeah, it's so tight. It's so tight. And there's so much fear. I mean, I think especially women do this thing with money, where like I was talking to this woman earlier who signed up for one of my programs, and she's like, oh, I'm sitting on a pile of money, but I have all of these ideas about how I should use my money. It should go to my house down payment. It should go to spending extra on my retirement. It should go more so I can just have more in my rainy day fund. We're not taught to spend money on, our softness and our vulnerability and nurturing ourselves and sourcing ourselves. We're taught to be practical. And that doesn't actually get us what we want.
And I notice for myself, as someone who identifies as a woman, and I feel like my primary energy is that more feminine energy, that when I get stressed or tense around something, I tend to try to take on more of that masculine feeling and hold the space and hold the container for myself and not be in that more receptive energy.
Yeah. And the thing is like to move through those spots, you have to be willing to surrender. And if you're a woman saying, well, but I'm all alone over here, like what am I surrendering to? Surrender to a higher power. And if you have a masculine presence in your life, you could also surrender to that person if you choose, or whatever form of like support is available to you. But the like gripping and clenching that we do, getting attached to an outcome, like it's never going to get us what we want.
Yeah. It's interesting, Cailin, as you're speaking, literally right before this call, I was in a situation with a coworker of mine, a man who I'm working together with. He's newer at this particular job that we're doing together. And we had We just came off a very intense week together, and he has this more, he's very, a little bit more slow and a little bit absent-minded, and we had a lot of things to get done. And I noticed myself like literally tensing my shoulders and getting a headache and feeling like, oh man, this is really not flowing for me. And yeah, and that's this idea of how to be able to surrender, not in the sense of becoming complacent, like, okay, whatever, I'm out, I
Yeah.
can't work with this person, he's incompetent, like I'm just checking out entirely. It's like, what does surrender look like in that moment? And
Mhm.
to me, that requires being really present in my body and just relaxing into the moment and asking, what is the easiest, smoothest, like least resistant path in this moment, like what feels best in this moment. And that's really challenging sometimes for me to move out of that and to be like not gripping onto like, oh, but you aren't doing how I want you to do it, or you're not doing it. It's like, how can I surrender into that?
Yeah. Well, and oh, this is such a good distinction. Surrender does not mean do nothing. It just means like, how can you relax into this as opposed to grip onto it? If you're like, okay, wow, how can you open your body up and open yourself up to surrender and have it go differently and have the outcome be anything,
Yep.
because that's the thing I hear with like your coworkers, like you got to just be willing to be like, okay.
Right. Right. It's almost like if you're on a horse and you have the reins of the horse and the horse isn't going. I don't ride horses, by the way, so this analogy may not work at all. I have no idea how horses act. But if you're riding the horse and like the horse isn't going where you want, and you just like keep pulling, like
Yeah,
tightening the reins and pulling on the reins, and it just doesn't work. Maybe it works. I have no idea with horses, but like in my mind, it's
yeah,
like that wouldn't work. It's like, and this is what I'm observing even in
yeah,
this situation. It's like it doesn't work. And the part about being willing to not know the outcome feels
yeah,
so key. Like I don't actually know what being on the other side of that working dynamic looks like, where I'm just like relaxed and spacious and receptive to like, okay, here I am, what's my highest calling right now?
hmm, yeah. It's a real practice for me every day. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I'm feeling just a lot of appreciation for you.
Thank you. I received that.
Mm, mm. It was beautiful to even see you receive. That was beautiful.
Mm,
Like I could almost feel that comment going across space and time and like landing in your body.
oh, thank you for seeing that. It's yeah, this is one of the things that I have women do, when they work with me. It's like open your body, open your legs, and really take in what's being given to you.
Hmm.
That will change your life.
Hmm. Hmm. As you were saying that, Cailin, an image was coming to me of myself and also of many other women, of having a shield. almost like there's compliments and resources that are constantly beaming down on me, on us.
Yeah.
But there's that shield, like even in taking a compliment, how many times I'd be like, thank you, or just deflect it. And I'm realizing that's actually me not letting it in.
Oh yeah. This one, I think most people, men included, are just totally blind to. So in the world, when I acknowledge someone or thank someone or see something and I say something, I see this all the time. How people are like, no, and I will pause and slow everything down. You're like, no, 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 you do not have to downplay this. You can just receive. And I think it's the most advanced work out there. It is so much, it requires something totally different than what you do to pour out and pour out and pour out.
Hmm. I think most of us, or shouldn't say that. I know for myself, I feel much more comfortable pouring out. That feels somehow socially acceptable, or like I'm being a productive human or something.
Yeah. And that's how it is, I think, especially for most women. Because we're just conditioned. It's like be nice, be likable, do good things. And then people will love you if you do all these nice things.
And so, what are some tips? I mean, you spoke earlier about the body and feeling the body, literally uncrossing your legs, opening your body, relaxing your body. And I love that. And I feel that. What are some other tips you might give to people who are trying to learn this art of receiving?
Yeah, I would say do it so all of those things, and create bite-sized experiences where you can practice this. So one of the things that I love to give to my clients is to teach someone in their life exactly how to make their coffee or their tea, and then practice asking for it and fully receiving it. And I mean down to every moment of this. So like, let's say this is the tea, right? Me receiving this like this, right? You couldn't feel that, right? It's just like, okay. But if someone hands me this, thank you. That was just a whole body experience.
Yeah.
And you can do that everywhere. You know, random person calls you on the phone and whatever helps you with your refrigerator repair. You can slow down and say, it felt so good to receive your service today. Thank you. You know, like all the service professionals that come out of my house, I mean, they are just like lit up. My mailman is like, how can I talk to Cailin today? You know, because I really receive him.
Mhm. Yes. Everyone's like, Cailin, I'll pay you to come fix your dishwasher. Can I come fix your dishwasher?
My landlord was literally like, I should be paying you to live here.
Wow. You are doing something right, my dear. This is working.
Yeah. So
Wow.
it's like just create little bite-sized experiences. Or if you want to talk about like in the bedroom, I was sharing with you that when I first opened up this door of exploring my intimacy and my sexuality, it was like, okay, create little time containers, and so just identify one thing you want to receive, like, yeah, like light touch all over my body with this feather. And let's just try that for 3 minutes. Set a timer. And then just practice receiving so you can actually let go, because so often with women we think, oh, if I'm receiving, I'm gonna have to pay a bill. I'm gonna have to pay this back. And so to set up the conditions where you're not paying back anything, you're just opening to receive. That's where you can really learn what this feels like. And then from that place, I pour out so much because I'm full, because I have expanded my capacity to receive. But I used to pour out from a place of just being totally empty, just depleted.
Right. Absolutely. And I was having a conversation with a partner of mine recently, and he was saying, sometimes I don't feel appreciated. And so we talked about it. I said, okay, how are some ways that I can appreciate you better? And I also was like, well, how do you appreciate yourself? Like, are you really appreciating yourself? Because I got the sense that he wasn't really feeling appreciation for himself. And from that place, it's like, I can't give you what you are not allowing yourself to receive. So it has
Yeah,
to come from us first.
yeah, you have to start with yourself. And it's just giving yourself what you desire, what you really desire is such a beautiful receiving practice, for sure.
Wonderful. Well, Cailin, it has been so fantastic to talk to you. We're going to wrap up here in a moment, but I would love for you to share a couple of words about how people can work with you. And I know you have a program coming up called Cocoon. I would love to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cocoon starts on August 4th, and Cocoon is my fully embodied feminine experience. And it is a melting pot of women coming together, creating magic and desire and surrendering. And you can imagine like a literal cocoon. It's like where women get to be held, right? I work with so many women who are leaders and entrepreneurs, and they have like they have got it figured out, and it's handled. Their life is handled, and they're holding everybody else in their lives. And so when you come into Cocoon, you get to be held there, and then come out on the other side just softer, realizing this doesn't have to be hard. I don't have to effort. I don't have to produce results. I can actually just allow my life to unfold. So we'll, I think, we could probably include a link, but if you want to have a conversation with me, you can go to talkwithcailin.com and book a desire call. And then the other thing I'll share is that if you want to get, sort of my top, I don't want to call it tips, but like, my wisdom around desire, I invite you to go to cailin.online. And I have a guide that's all about getting out of your head and into your body. And sort of some of the ways that I've created that over time. And I love saying hi to people on Instagram, so we can also include that as well.
Amazing. Well, Cailin, thank you so much for joining. It has been such a pleasure being with you. And reach out to Cailin, reach out to me. We'd love to hear your thoughts on what we've talked about, and wishing all of you a really wonderful day.